Why people like abstract art and why our brains hurt so good when we look at paintings that might mean nothing to us. Why abstract art and art in general are so powerful. This is a story about breakthrough science that was not done by art historians, but by neuroscientists who won a Nobel Prize in medicine. It involves important lectures about humanity, human memory, crazy long journey into abstract art, and complex experiments involving giant sea snails. I'm serious, you cannot make this stuff up. And at the very end of this episode, I'm going to share my secrets with you, how I use those theories to implement inside my art that I create and novels that I write. Because I'm writer and mathematician Vladislav Radak, and this is Fabric of Life, a show where we try to fuse art and science to answer humanity's most difficult questions. And today's question is partially difficult, because all of us once stood inside an art gallery or museum looking at, abstract painting and thinking this makes no sense, yet we felt something inside, and it was really hard to share with others. What it is, I'm going to answer in today's episode. Let me take you on an adventure.
Hello, Instagram.
Bad boy. Run wild. I'm on a mission and I won't stop. No destination.
But before we start, if you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe, because every week I'm taking you on an amazing adventure. Next week, or some of next weeks, I'm going to take you to Italy, to Portugal, to Egypt, to discover world's secrets using art and science. And at the very end of this episode, I'm going to answer some of your questions from the previous episode in the part that I call office hours. And the question that I'm going to answer at the very end of this episode goes like this. Ilgaz wrote 1 week ago how you can be successful this much and attractive at the same time. I kid you not, I'm going to answer on this question scientifically. Stay tuned. The great discoveries in art, as in many other fields, come from thinking outside of the box. Interdisciplinary studies break new ground because those constantly lashed to a specific field or way of thinking tend to dig deeper into our familiar earth, where the fresh set of eyes coming from different school of thought can look at the old problems in the new ways. So it's no surprise that the biggest breakthrough in art comes not from art historians, but from Eric Kandel, who is Nobel Prize winning neuroscientist. Ask your average person walking down the street which sort of art they find more intimidating or like less, or they don't understand at all, and they'll point to abstract or minimalist art. Show them traditional, formal, naturalistic art like Bellini's Sacred Allegory, art which draws from traditional core Western texts like Bible and mythology, alongside Mark Rothko or Jason Pollock or Kazimir Malevich, and they'll retreat into Bellini, even though it's one of the most puzzling unsolved mysteries of the art world, a riddle of a picture for which one reasonable solution has ever been put forward. The Pollock on the other side is just a tangle of dripped paint, the Rothko is just a color with a bar of another color on top of it, and the Malevich is all white. Kandel's work explained this in a very simple way. In abstract painting, elements are included not as visual representations of objects, but as references or clues to how we conceptualize objects. In describing the world they see, abstract artists not only dismantle many of the building blocks of bottom-up visual processing by eliminating perspective and general depiction, they also nullify some of the premises on which bottom-up processing is based. We scan an abstract painting for links between line segments, for recognizable contours and objects, but in the most fragmented works, such as those by Rothko, our efforts somehow leave us empty-handed. Thus, the reason abstract art possesses such a normal challenge to the beholder is that it teaches us to look at the art and, in a sense, at the world in a new way. Abstract art dares our visual system to interpret an image that is fundamentally different from the kind of images our brain has evolved to reconstruct. Kandel then goes on to describe the difference between bottom-up and top-down thinking. And while this might be a basic stuff for neuroscience students, this is definitely something new for the rest of us, including people who study art. Now I'm trying to find a perfect example of bottom-up thinking, and while you might think that, it's bottom-up, it doesn't necessarily need to be so. Basically what it means is that on our way of making conclusions, we actually take all the prior knowledge of previous generations and everything what we learned before. So bottom-up thinking means that we understand that our source of the light is the sun, and the sun is really far away and really hot, and also the earth is round and the water is wet, etc. So it includes all that scientific stuff and all our experiences, not only from ourselves personally, but from generations prior. And me as a scientist and as a mathematician, I always use most of the time this bottom-up thinking. I know that 1 + 1 is 2, and I start from that to build much complex theories. Top-down thinking, on the other hand, is based on our personal experience and knowledge, and is not ingrained in us as humans with millennia of experience that have programmed us. Top-down thinking is needed to interpret formal, symbol, or story-rich art. But top-down thinking is also the reason why something like scenarios like this might happen. For example, you read a book, okay, this is a non-fiction book, maybe this book from Saramago, and it touches you so deeply. And it makes you laugh, it makes you cry, it makes you feel a lot of things. Then, excited, you give it to your friend, he or she, a good friend, he or she reads that again, and they don't feel the same. They say like, okay, it's a good book, but I don't understand what the fuss is about. The top-down thinking is reason behind that. And this is exactly what abstraction does to our brains. It taps bottom-up thinking, requiring little to no a priori knowledge. Abstract art frees us from the chains of humanity that we all belong to. It gives us freedom to forget all the art lessons someone else taught us. We don't need to read in stories of our parents or grandparents or myths of religion that we are all brought in. Abstract art gives us opportunity to be a child again, to discover again shapes, objects, their relationships, colors, and light. But the mind-bending point that Kendall makes is that abstract art, which strips away the narrative, the real-life expressed values, requires active problem-solving. We instinctively search for patterns, recognizable shapes, formal figures within the abstraction. We want to impose a rational explanation onto work, and abstract and minimalist art resist this. It makes our brains work in a different, harder way at a very subconscious level. Though we don't articulate it as much, perhaps this is why people find abstract art more intimidating and are hastier to dismiss it. It requires their brains to function in a different, less comfortable, more puzzled way, more puzzled even than when looking at a formal puzzle painting. He often returns to the concept of reductionism. To get his mind-bending conclusion, Kendall firstly studied giant sea snails to understand the human brain. Sea snails have just 20,000 neurons in their brains, where humans have billions. The simpler organism was easier to study, and those results could be applied to humans. But those theories behind this neuroscience concept I also use while writing my books, my novels, and I promise you to discover or to share with you a couple of secrets that I use while writing. Give me a second. This is certainly a good example, and it's for me not really easy to explain how or why I do this, but since I explained you a little bit more about this abstract art concept, maybe now you can understand a little bit easier and I can share. Basically what I do is I try scientifically to measure the human attention and basically to see the story as some kind of, okay, I have my comb here, as some kind of plasticity. I try to bend the story as much as I can, but if I bend it too hard, if I make it too fast, too complicated, too artificial, then this, bended story might snap and I might finally lose readers' attention. This is what I don't want to do. I want to bend it as far as I can go and then to completely relax the story going into abstract art. And how I do an abstract art is basically I think about abstract art in writing novels in a form of poetry. Then I start, writing passages that are deeply poetic, but they don't need to mean something. Of course, I follow the rules of poetry and I try to craft them as best as possible. Of course, they somehow need to fit in a story, but I also try to relax reader and to, maybe relax and massage his brain or her brain and open his or her heart. And then I actually try to strip also readers' armor, because somehow reader also wants to protect his own knowledge and his own brain from all this information that I'm giving him or her. Then when the armor is stripped with abstract art, with some passages that are really hard to grasp, I basically start from the very beginning and I say to them, okay, relax, you can forget everything that stressed you from the previous chapter, just let those sentences flow. Let me give you an example. The painful silver pricks of light disappear for a moment and I'm swallowed by the darkness. Ideas crucify me, they're tearing me apart. I don't want to die, not tonight. This might be the part of the story that means nothing or that it has no specific value to the story, but it gives reader some abstraction that he can relax his brain and start over. Abstract art is where we began and where have we returned. It makes our brain hurt in an enjoyable way. It makes us think. It helps our neuroplasticity. But most importantly, it makes us forget what we learned so we can start all over again. Okay, I know I promised you that I'm going to answer the question, okay, but I'm going to do it really fast because I want to go back to reading. The question was, I'm paraphrasing, why I'm so attractive and successful at the same time. And my dear Ilgas, there is actually a pretty simple scientific answer for that. Well, you might find me attractive, but the science shows that actually attractiveness when it comes to males are pretty normally distributed, which means that, most of the males are, equally attractive to some group or some specific, subsection of females. This is why how humanity survived all these years, centuries, whatever, evolved as well. We can all agree that, that the distribution is not the same for the females, that universally some females are considered, really attractive and stuff, but we're not going into detail as well. So what I'm trying to say, if you theoretically find me attractive, just ask some of your female friends and they will probably say that I'm ugly as fuck. And that's completely okay. This is why we come to the second part, my success. And while partially my reason for my success is hard work, let's say 10 or 12 hours every day, 5, 6, 7 days a week for the last 30 years, hard studying, mathematics, reading a lot of books, trying to do as much sports as possible because we know that in developed body, brain can develop faster. Main reason for my success is actually luck. This is in science called success paradox, and I really hoped to cover this specific topic in one of the next episodes. But basically success paradox means that there might be a person somewhere around the world who worked harder, who is theoretically more gifted and talented than me, and who still doesn't have the same level of success measured by society's standards as me. Yes, I know it's unfortunate and sad, but this is how it is. I hope this answers all of your questions. If you have more, please let me down in comments down below. Until next week, stay tuned and curious, and don't forget, libraries still exist.